So I think it's time for another In It Rants video where I'm just going to go through some stuff that I'm kind of a little bit gutted about in game at the moment, and it's to do with Elite Dungeon 4 or Zamorak. There's a few points I want to make in this video, and then also a few questions that I want to ask you guys and get your opinions on. You know what I'm like. I like to know what everyone's thinking in the community and actually take into account how you guys look at things and how you actually appreciate what's happening in the game, or like what you like and what you don't like. Knowing this sort of thing not only helps me with making content in the future, but it also is pretty valuable for me as a content creator to know why you guys like this and why you guys like that. But anyway, in this video I want to talk about ED4 and Zamorak and whether Jagex made a mistake or whether they didn't, or what it means for the future of the game. So if you enjoy this sort of video, leave a like, sub to the channel if you are new. Background footage, likely just me doing ED4 or something. That's probably about it. With that being said, let's get started. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. When we got the new boss announced, they announced this boss as a new elite dungeon, which it is. Technically it is. There is a new elite dungeon and the Zamorak at the end, and in all honesty, I personally believe the Elite Dungeon 4 and Zamorak is one of the better pieces of content PVM wise that Jagex has actually released to date. I think it's really well done and I think it's incredible, but this is kind of where it confuses me a little bit. I don't quite understand the whole idea behind the point of it. They've put so much time and effort into the Elite Dungeon and it's done really well. Like, I think the actual dungeon design and the rewards for the dungeon, working with slivers rather than working on actual drop rates and stuff like that, like rare drops and whatnot, I think they've done a really good job with the design on it, and credit where credit's due. Great. The thing that confuses the crap out of me is the dungeons are relevant for 99% of players. Once you unlock your skips, I believe completing 25 full runs, you can then just completely skip through to Zamorak. You can just kill Zamorak over and over again and push your enrage up that way. This does make sense in the sense that obviously you're not going to want to run the full dungeon again and again when you can just kill the boss. Everybody's going to choose to skip this because killing Zamorak alone is going to be a lot more profitable, and also you get to fight the boss. I like the idea behind it, but I feel like the way it's been implemented makes the dungeon completely irrelevant. Unless you are just farming there for the slivers, for maybe like an Iron Man or something like that, you want the enchantments, then I don't really see any other reason to do this unless you specifically want to make money there without killing Zamorak, okay? So like, there's not really a whole lot of reason to do this. I think I'm probably one of the very few people that quite often run the full dungeon rather than just skipping through to Zamorak. Now, when you do this, you can only really do it in normal mode, otherwise it's not worth your time. If you run the full dungeon and you let your enrage go up, the dungeon takes a hell of a lot longer than it would normally do, but the rewards are pretty much exactly the same. So if you do the dungeon run on 100% enrage or 200% enrage, it does have a cap, I believe at 250 possibly, something like this. I'm not 100% sure, but if you do it at this enrage and you do it at normal mode, the chance of slivers is exactly the same, as you still have the lucky charms. The lucky charms is what affects the sliver drop rate, so doing it on a higher enrage doesn't really make a difference. However, if you complete the dungeon and you've done it in normal mode, you get to the end, happy days, you may have got slivers, you may have not, but you have made a good amount of money and you get an increased drop rate at Zamorak. But because you're in normal mode, with the changes to bad luck mitigation, which I agree is absolutely right, I think bad luck mitigation being above 100% is where it should be, and the way they've done it is absolutely fine and worked well for the people who are just killing Zamorak over and over and over again. But for those who run the dungeon, you are going to be doing this in normal mode. One, you don't get to experience the actual full fight anyway, which is a little sad because phase 7 in Zamorak is fun as hell. But two, you're not going to get bad luck mitigation stacks for running the full dungeon. So there's a couple of things you're missing out on here. If you prefer to run Elite Dungeons, because when they announced this, I got mega excited for a new Elite Dungeon. You guys know, or people who are regular to the channel know, that I like doing Elite Dungeons more than most other content in the game. I think it breaks down the actual grind a little bit. I think the actual running through and making progress through the dungeon, it just feels more rewarding. It is my style of content, and I know that there's plenty of people that agree with the same. And also, it is a hell of a lot more enjoyable to watch than just going in, killing Rakshi for 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes, and then teleporting, then killing Rakshi for 2.5 minutes and teleporting. So the content is also more enjoyable to watch too. So when they did announce an Elite Dungeon, I was like, hell yes. A new Elite Dungeon. This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. This is amazing. I'm so glad. And then never mind. It's pretty much dead content once everybody gets past the thing. So yes, I can still run the dungeon, but I don't get bad luck mitigation. There's no reason to do it above 100% to get the last phase, which is hella fun and exciting to watch. And then the rewards, yes, you do get a better drop rate, but it's not going to be the same as just doing the boss at 100%, 200% and stacking that bad luck mitigation up. It makes no sense. So the dungeon feels pretty much irrelevant to run at this point, but let's go back to the point again. They did it so damn well. The dungeon is done really, really well. It's a challenge to actually get through. It's not mega fast to get through as well. Like, getting 3 runs an hour is possible, but you've got to work your ass off for it. And you've got to use things like your Statius Warhammer, you're doing your mines. It's high level elite dungeon content, whereas the other 3 kind of feel a little bit crap these days. Like, the power creep has pretty much wiped out the 3 dungeons for myself, at least, and some other high level players, because it's just, you just one-shot them. Greater Chain, Omni Power, room's done. It's pretty much exactly how that works, right? But in Elite Dungeon 4, it's nice to have that upgraded feel where you still got to push your way through. So, in it, what are you exactly saying? What do you want from this? What would you hope would make this better? What is the solution? You can't just sit here and rant for a whole 6 minutes and then go, Jagex, do something, please. You gotta give a reason, right? And I don't like to make a rant video or a complaint without having some form of solution. Now, I am not a gaming developer. I've said this like a million times, and it's kind of my disclaimer at this point because I don't know what the frick can work and what can't. But at the same time, I am fairly sure that if you could find even a similar balance, now it doesn't have to be, you're not going to be able to scale this. You can't have it balanced to the point where pushing the dungeon and actually running the full dungeon is going to be as good as killing Zamorak over and over again. Of course not. And that's not a big deal. But if the dungeon was worthwhile doing for the people who wanted to do it, then that would be cool. So, what I would personally like to see is, what if running the dungeon even in normal mode, but because you ran the full dungeon and cleared the dungeon and killed Zamorak, you get 1 stack of bad luck mitigation in normal mode, and then as you go up in rage, you start getting more stacks depending on what in rage you're at, keeping in mind that the dungeon takes a hell of a long time to clear. So 50%, I don't know, 100% maybe gives you like another 2 stacks rather than just 1, because at that time you could still kill Zamorak probably 3 times by the time you've done it in 1 dungeon run, probably even 4 or 5 times depending on how difficult the dungeon is at that enrage, and then maybe scale the bad luck mitigation at that point. That way it would still be technically worth running the dungeon if you wanted to, because if you could get yourself 3 stacks of bad luck mitigation for clearing the dungeon at a higher enrage, as the same amount of enrage it would take you to maybe get like 6 stacks of bad luck mitigation from killing the boss normally anyway, then I don't see a problem with this. I don't see why this would be an issue. You're still spending the same amount of time. You're getting the same amount of bad luck mitigation stacks that someone who didn't do the dungeon would get, or not even the same, like half that, or just something out of it at least. You've got the chance of getting the slivers, which is absolutely great. You can challenge yourself on the actual dungeon run too, and you can get that different content out of it, the different change of scenery, and you also get that increased drop chance when you fight Zamorak. So rather than fighting Zamorak 10 times, you fight him once, and you do get a better chance at drop rates. Not as good as killing him 10 times, of course. I'm not saying it has to be the same or better or anything like that, but you do get an increased drop chance as well. So you're killing Zamorak less times, but you're clearing the dungeon and you're getting more bad luck mitigation stacks. I don't see why this would be a problem. Add a reason to actually use this dungeon. They've done a good job in the design. The design of it is freaking insane. It looks so good. The ideas in there are really good. I like the fact that there's no actual bosses in between to actually fight. I like the idea that you just run through the dungeon and the content in the dungeon is the boss. Like that's the difficulty. The actual trash mobs aren't utter trash. They do hurt. You do have to pay attention. You do have to do things specifically. And to do it efficiently, you have to understand what the dungeon's like. I like this. This is good. Having the jailer, it's not a big deal. People think the jailer is just tedious. It's not a big deal. If you compare it to doing Taraket, it's fine. It's not a problem. The mini boss before the actual fight, it's not a big deal. You can DPS through it pretty quick, and it is a little bit more of a challenge than just killing normal trash mobs. So it's nice to have it. But overall, the dungeon itself, there is no reason to do it, and it's sad to me because I prefer elite dungeon content, and I'm just kind of complaining a little bit, but at the same time, why spend so long designing something so good just to let it die? Why? After a little coughing fit there, unfortunately. I personally, I would love to see the actual Elite Dungeon 4 become more relevant. But back to the whole topic of what could this mean for the future of the game? Well, for me personally, I prefer the Elite Dungeon run, right? I prefer the full thing. I think it's more enjoyable. But for most people, and I know that I am pretty much on this hill with myself and maybe a few others, like a handful of people, everybody else probably prefers to be able to skip the dungeon. Everybody wants to skip the dungeon. Everybody just wants to fight Zamorak. That seems like that's what people prefer to do. And that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with people doing that. If you can implement both, then happy days. Yes, that is so good if you can have a good balance, or even a close balance, right? But at the moment, the other 3 elite dungeons have become fairly irrelevant for higher level players with power creep and stuff. And the new elite dungeon has kind of pretty much said that people don't want elite dungeons anymore, in the sense that people are just going to skip past it. So maybe ED4 will spell the end of elite dungeon content and actual content like this for PvM in the future, when this is kind of the most unique style of actual PvM content, in my opinion. Going into a boss fight and fighting a boss for 3 minutes and then teleporting out and resetting isn't something that appeals to me all that much. It's cool for the time being, like at the beginning, it's fun when it's released, and it's nice to experience new mechanics and stuff, but actually having more to a fight, pushing a dungeon through, killing different bosses along the way, it feels more like a real PvM experience to me. Now, this is just my opinion, but I feel like RuneScape does definitely need both, and I do think that it would be better to be able to have this sort of thing in the future. So, do you guys have an opinion on this? Let me know in the comments what you guys think. I'm not going to go on much longer. There's not really much more to say, other than I really do hope that Jagex can take a look at ED4 at some point and go, we spent so long designing this content and barely anyone uses it. The dungeon itself, can you imagine being that mod who, I'm sure it's like maybe a group of mods that design the actual dungeon, and then you're just like, well, we can skip it. It's my content that I made has been skipped every time. It's just pointless. Why? It just feel, I don't know. And all the other rooms that you can go in the dungeon as well, that you don't, there's no reason to use them, but maybe there should be. Jagex, just do something with this, please. It's such a good design at the base, but it just needs more, and it needs a reason to do it. I will run the dungeon, 1 dungeon an hour, stressing like crazy at 150%, 200% in rage, if it means at the end of it I have a stack of 4 bad luck mitigation stacks or something, and I also get a decent chance of the drop at the end. It makes sense. If it was for, I'm fine with that. I am fine throwing myself at these trash bombs that take ages to kill, if that's what it takes for me to actually get some value out of it. That's fine. That's fun for me. I'm happy to push through a dungeon that takes that long. So again, what do you guys think in the comments? Let me know. Am I just complaining about something that doesn't really matter? Probably, but I do think this would be a great addition to the game. I think people would enjoy it. Like I say, I'm on this hill pretty much alone. I think there's probably going to be a few people that will agree with me. Maybe I'll be surprised at how many there is. I don't know. Are you kind of sad that the elite dungeon isn't really an elite dungeon because it's just skipped through to the boss? The boss is great, by the way. It absolutely is. But what do you guys think? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, do sub to the channel. If you are new around here, do leave a like as well. Otherwise, channel members, I appreciate all your support. Like, I really do. It helps out a ton, especially at this point with all the ad revenue stuff and whatnot. But other than that, Patreon people as well, you guys just the same. Thank you. It's appreciated. All your names will be on screen. If anyone else wants to join the channel members or Patreon to get either unique content for Patreon or early access to videos for channel members and emotes and stuff during stream, then the links are in the description. But other than that, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.